Episode 64 of Unentitled Sports is live. Welcome back. We're going to start this one out with a bang. Deebo Samuel has been traded to the Washington Commanders for a fifth round pick, and it certainly didn't take very long at all. It was last episode that we broke the news that Deebo Samuel had requested a trade, and I think we were sort of wondering how many episodes is it going to be until Deebo Samuel actually gets traded? Well, turns out it was just one episode. I think this is the quickest any sort of trade request or contract dispute in recent 49ers history has been resolved. And if you measure it by Unentitled Sports episodes, it is just one. But yeah, so Deebo Samuel and his entire $17.55 million salary is going to the Washington Commanders. The 49ers get just one measly fifth round pick back in return. And where's your head in all of this, Lucas?
My immediate thought is a fifth round pick is not as good as a fourth round pick, right? Because when we came on last episode,
Insightful.
talked about how Deebo Samuel had requested that trade. What we expected was to receive a fourth round pick. That Commanders fourth round pick was something that I saw specifically addressed, and the fact that we got a fifth round pick is a little bit disappointing. Is it that much of a difference? The difference between a fourth round and a fifth round pick? Not really. But it kind of leaves us where we were expecting to be as of last time, which is, a little bit of sadness that Deebo's gone, but not feeling like this is the end of the world. What does suck, though, is that huge cap hit that comes about now that we have traded Deebo Samuel. All of his prorated signing bonus, which I think totals to about $32 million, is a dead cap hit for this upcoming season. So that makes things a lot harder when it comes to signing other players, and the Niners are already in a really tough spot when it comes to extending Brock Purdy and re-signing some of our good players. So that is how I'm feeling. I'm not feeling good. After this trade, the Niners go from Deebo Samuel to a fifth-round pick, which will theoretically not be as impactful on the football field as Deebo Samuel, and our cap situation gets worse. So in the short term, this is a bad thing for us. No question about that. This is a bad thing. In the long term, you can argue that not having Deebo Samuel's contract on the books the next 2 or 3 years from now, it will be a positive thing. We won't have Deebo Samuel on the team, so there's a give and take when it comes to that as well. But Nick Bosa's contract is going to be coming around pretty soon, and that's something like a $40 million cap hit per year. And Brock Purdy's going to get a huge one this offseason, so it does free up things for that. But it kind of just is the palpable materialization of these cap woes that the 49ers have been in. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. If I were to give it a grade, I would give it a D. The only reason I'm not giving it an F is because, yes, Deebo did, in fact, request a trade, and I feel like the Niners were in a position where they kind of have to acquiesce to that trade request. And, at least they were able to have the Commanders take on as much money as they were allowed to, in theory. I don't think there's any way that the 49ers could have avoided having his accelerated or prorated signing bonus be a cap hit. I don't know if there was any possible way to avoid that or have the Commanders absorb any of that. I don't know. I don't think there was. But they were able to have the Commanders take on the entirety of Deebo's $17.5 million salary. And like you said, it does put us in a better cap situation after this season, and that does matter, obviously. But I think, where I'm at with the 49ers and where I think the 49ers are at with the 49ers, I think you have to take it one season at a time. I don't think the 49ers are building for the future. I think the future is now. I think the Super Bowl window is still open. I think it is closing, but I think it's still open and not for much longer, which I think means the 49ers have to do everything they can to maximize this season. And this Deebo Samuel trade is 2 steps backward. It's a step backwards on the field because we traded away, like we've been saying, obviously Deebo Samuel, his performance has been taking steps back past couple years, especially this year. But at the end of the day, Deebo Samuel is a plus wide receiver. And so we lose him, and that fifth round pick we're getting back in return is obviously not going to replace the production that Deebo Samuel brings to this team. So we take a big step backwards on the field, and we take a big step backwards on the salary cap table. The cap hit we have for Deebo Samuel has actually increased by trading him. So we have less money that we're able to spend to make this team as good as possible for the 2025 season, and that seems like a bad thing. So I give this trade a D.
And when you look at this trade in terms of what the Commanders gained, they actually pulled off something really good. They, for a fifth round pick, acquired a secondary wide receiver, which is kind of exactly what they needed. They probably need some more O-line, maybe an edge rusher to go, with that team, and then a secondary wide receiver. So to go and get a player like Deebo Samuel, who at his best is an incredibly impactful player, pair him with Terry McLaurin and a young upcoming quarterback in an offseason where you do have money to spend, your draft can now be focused on the other pieces that you need to acquire. Their first round pick doesn't have to go to, one of these top wide receivers in the draft anymore. They can focus on other areas where they get a lot better. So you look at a team that made a trade that makes a lot of sense for them in the situation that they're in right now. And then you look at the 49ers, who kind of just take the short end of the stick, really. So if you're grading the trade on who won, you can tell right now, okay, the Commanders won the trade. That's unless this fifth round pick ends up being a player better than Deebo Samuel, which it could be. We've seen that happen before, but it's probably
Highly
pretty
unlikely.
unlikely. Yeah, so it just kind of sucks. And the Niners were forced into making this trade because
Exactly.
of Deebo Samuel requesting the trade. And I'm guessing that there must have been more to that request than all the. Obviously, it wasn't a fake trade request. It wasn't one that he was making the request just to try to bargain to get a, better contract in the future. It was a real trade request to say, I'm going to leave. I want to leave. But it just felt like trading Deebo Samuel hurts the Niners.
Yes,
So
it does.
sad, but
Yeah,
true.
I'm pretty.
Sad,
I mean,
but true.
I'm pretty frustrated because, it's frustrating that Deebo Samuel is saying, "All right, I'm done with this team. I'm quitting on this team. Get me out of here." And then the Niners have to do that and are a worse team off because of it. It sucks that there was nothing the Niners could do to emerge from this episode a better team. And it's annoying. It's annoying that one player gets to make a decision and then it forces the entire 49ers to be worse off because of it. But I think it's pretty interesting.
I would have felt better if there was some way to offload that signing bonus as well. Then I would have felt very good because it opens so much more. We actually need to get rid of that money this season in particular. But that's not what happened.
I think what is interesting, excuse me, is, I think there's a pretty marked shift in the 49ers front office approach to player drama. I think the 49ers were remarkably scarred from the Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams episodes last offseason. And I think they feel like that derailed the season before it ever even started. I think that is the belief of the 49ers decision-making brass. And I think, obviously before the last couple of years, the 49ers have been able to drag these negotiations out. They get pretty ugly, but in the end, they resolve it and it all works out. That didn't happen last offseason. And I think the 49ers are pretty scarred by it. So I think they're taking a different approach. I think they wanted to solve this episode as quickly as possible, which is what you saw happen, which is a very different approach than how they've done it in the past. And I think that is the consequence, or because that I think that is because of the consequences of the Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams episodes, and that I think they feel like that's where the 2024 season got derailed.
And is it going to be the right way of going about things? Time will tell. I don't think so. I mean, just going from based on the fact that we were essentially projected to get a fourth round pick and then got a fifth round pick because of probably how quickly we decided to do everything. I don't really like that. So, John Lynch, in the way that he had strong armed players into, getting what he wanted, or, coming to a good middle ground with these players, it was working out pretty well in the past. And obviously this season, went to shit, and I can understand where he's coming from, saying we have to do things differently this year. And the way that it went down with Brandon Ayuk may have contributed to our horrible, season this year, and that's why he wanted to change things up. So, maybe the vibes will be better now that we have an entire off season of not having Deebo Samuel, not being like, oh, 3 weeks till the season starts, we still have to trade Deebo Samuel. Are we going to trade Deebo Samuel? That won't happen anymore. We're not going to have to deal with that drama. So that could be the positive part that I see from this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we talk about this season that the Niners just had being a season from hell. And it makes sense when you kind of look back and realize, okay, that last year they had an off season from hell. They had the worst off season possible last off season, and lo and behold, it leads into this horrible regular season where everything goes wrong. So I think the 49ers, are painfully aware of how destructive an off season can be, and they're doing everything they can to avoid that the second time around. But that will close the chapter on Deebo Samuel. It was a 6 year tenure with the San Francisco 49ers. And up until this episode, the first 63 episodes of Unentitled Sports included Deebo Samuel being on the 49ers.
It's
Now,
been a
episode 64 and
long
beyond,
day without you,
episode
my
64 and
friend.
beyond will be without Deebo Samuel. So, some parting feelings on Deebo Samuel. Like I said, it is frustrating that him, I don't feel bad for saying it. For him quitting on this team, it creates a situation that the Niners are worse off because of it. It is frustrating that he does that to this team. However, this is kind of the day and age we live in with players. They get what they want. And I think Deebo Samuel's 6 years of service with the 49ers, like I said last episode, this split, even though on paper it's rough, this split didn't get ugly. So I think Deebo's 6 years of service with the Niners, he deserves the well wishes from the 49ers.
How could we not talk about family when family is all that we got?
Moving on, it is Sunday, March 2nd. We've got about a month left of the NBA regular season, maybe just a little bit more. So while the playoff picture, there's still a lot to be decided, especially how congested the standings are. Something fun that the smoke is starting to clear on is the awards race. The awards race, we're starting to see some front runners. We're starting to see which races are going to be close, and we're starting to get a clear picture of what to expect and what to look forward to. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do blind stats of NBA awards races. So for those of you who don't know what blind stats are, you get the stats of players, but you don't tell them their name. You don't tell them whose stats these are. So player A has these stats, player B has these stats, player C has these stats, and then based on their stats, we're going to pick who we think should be winning these awards. So I've done my
And
research.
this is all to prevent something that happened. Joel Embiid won the MVP over Nikola Jokic. Looking back, like, are you kidding me? This is the most ridiculous MVP award of all time. That season, Nikola Jokic went on to win a championship, by the way. Nuts in Embiid's face. We gotta take the narratives out of these things. Kendrick
Well,
Perkins can come on ESPN and say
I
whatever he
will.
wants.
Let me interject because I do think I actually think blind stats. Joel Embiid actually had some better blind
Okay,
stats than,
you might
than Nikola
you might be
Jokic.
right about that.
So I see.
But there needs
I
to
agree
be
with you. I
a
agree with
vibes
you
category
or
on the
that
blind
Embiid
stats.
stole an MVP from Jokic. However, I don't think blind stats would have stopped that from happening. So if
I think they would.
yeah, you might be right. You might be right.
Who knows?
Okay, so I've obviously not all these stats are the same, but I've picked out stats that I feel like are important for all these award races. I skipped Rookie of the Year because Rookie of the Year this year sucks, and I don't care. You don't care. Nobody cares about Rookie of the Year, and blind stats for Rookie of the Year just wouldn't be fun. But I've picked out stats for the three front runners for MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Most Improved Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year. So, Lucas, unless there's anything you'd like to add, I think we should get into it.
Let's run it. I'm excited.
All right. So for MVP, there's a lot of stats. Some of them are basic, some of them are advanced. Bear with me, and I'll walk you through it. But I've sort of broken it down into three or four categories. First category is just going to be basic stats. Second category is advanced stats. Third category is advanced stats, and then the fourth category is just win percentage.
Let's determine the MVP based on blind stats or something
Or
like
yeah,
that.
or blind stats NBA awards races. First up, MVP.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah,
So
yeah. All right.
nice.
Um,
Okay.
all right. So player A, he is averaging 32.3 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 6.1 assists. Scoring wise, he's doing this on 64.2% true shooting, and he has a player efficiency rating of 30.7. His team's net rating when he's on the floor is 16.8, and his team's net rating when he's off the floor is 1.3. So per 100 possessions, his team is 15.5 points better when he is on the floor, and his team has a win percentage of .817.
All right. I mean, those are incredible stats. The highest scoring player in the league, I believe, at 32.3 points per game. 5 rebounds and 6 assists. I do already know who this player is, just based on the winning percentage that you gave. And I don't want to spoil it for all those listeners at home who haven't figured it out yet. But this guy looks like a guard to me based on his statistics.
How did you know?
But shooting a true shooting percentage of 64.2% from the guard position is absolutely incredible. The net rating swing that you mentioned, 16.8 on and 1.3 off, with the best record in the NBA to top it all off at .817 win percentage. That has a very strong case for the MVP, 100%.
Yes. Player B, averaging 29.1 points per game, 12.7 rebounds, 10.5 assists on a true shooting percentage of 66.6 and a player efficiency rating of 32.7. His team's net rating when he is on the floor is 12.6. His team's net rating when he's off the floor is -8.5. So that is a net rating swing of 21.1 when this player is on versus off the floor. And his team has a win percentage of .639.
Well, this guy could be going for his 4th MVP. Is that right? Is his
That is
4th
right.
MVP award that he would be going for this year? Don't want to spoil it for anybody. Is there any other player who has 3 MVPs that is in the league right now? I don't think so. So if you haven't, that's another just category. Blind stat. 1 MVP 3 times.
How many
already.
MVPs have you already run? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that actually matters. When it comes to the voting.
Yes.
Of course, it matters. But
I
we are
don't think
doing
it matters when
blind-
it comes to blind stats.
Absolutely not. And I will not judge this player based on that. Look at his stats right here. 29.1 points per game, 12 and 10. Almost 13 and 10. That is averaging a triple-double. And there was a point in the NBA where we felt if a player was to average a triple-double, they would obviously win MVP. So, averaging numbers like this, the assists is what stands out to me the most. This guy getting 13 rebounds a game is obviously a big man, but someone who is able to facilitate like one of the best point guards in the league, like Chris Paul in his prime, averaging 10 assists per game. The true shooting percentage of 66.6, it might be a little misleading to think, oh, this is a big man, so he's obviously going to shoot that well. Well, guess what?
He shoots
from all over the court. He shoots everywhere. So that 66.6 true shooting percentage is incredibly impressive. The PER with this player is always at the top of the league, and I think he has some of the greatest seasons of all time in PER. So his stats pop off the page. The only thing that I would say, lends itself towards player A over player B would be that win percentage.
Yes.
I think statistically, if you were to take off the win percentage category here, player B is better than player A. Mm-hmm. Just, the net rating swing is super important. A 21.1 point swing in net rating when he's on the court versus when he's off the court. That is incredible. That's just like you have a very dominant team when he's on the court and an objectively bad team when he's off the court.
Yeah.
So kind of player like that? That is a valuable player.
Yes.
That is what a valuable player is, right?
Yeah. I do want to add a little bit of context to the net rating on and net rating off stats. Because when I first saw those stats, I'm like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. There's a 20 points per 100 possessions difference when this player is on versus off the floor. However, you got to remember, when this guy is taken off of the floor, usually the rest of the starters are taken off of the floor too.
Yes.
And that holds true.
That's true of everybody here.
That you're right. That is true of everybody. However, that might just say this player's team has a really bad bench, whereas player's A team has a really good bench, which shouldn't matter in the MVP race, obviously. So yes, obviously the net rating swing, that is a very valuable stat. That's why I included it. But you just when you look at those numbers, you have to kind of temper your reaction with context in that these net rating stats can be misleading because net rating is a team stat. And it's the stat of all 5 guys on the floor. And when you take your best player off the floor, usually you're taking most, if not all, of your starters off the floor with him.
And if you do notice the win percentages here, player A must have a better backup. You know, like they win more games, so their
Player
bench
A's
probably
backup
is
might
better.
be AJ Mitchell.
Yo, shut up. Roll shows. Roll shows. So what
Yeah.
about player C?
So player C is averaging 30.9 points per game, 12.1 rebounds per game, 5.9 assists per game, true shooting 62.1%, and a PER of 29.9. His team's net rating when he's on the floor is 5.1, and his team's net rating when he's off the floor is negative 3.4. So per 100 possessions, his team has a net rating that is 8.5 points better when he is on the floor versus off, and his team has a win percentage of .576.
So just looking at the stats here, you see 30 points per game, incredibly impressive. 12 rebounds, and then a pretty standard, 6 assists per game. Tells me that this guy is obviously a big man who doesn't necessarily facilitate his offense. He is a incredible scorer, but he's not doing as much as player B, in my opinion. And his PER is very good, of course. This guy is obviously a great player. The net rating swing is not very large compared to the other players on this list, though. Just 8.5 versus him on and him off. We saw 15.5 and 21.5, and then his win percentage being at .576, the lowest of these three players. I think that does eliminate him from contention for the
Yeah.
MVP this year. Just not a good enough team, and it seems like he's not carrying them as much as these other players are. So,
Yeah.
a great player in his own and an NBA champion and former MVP in himself, but not this year.
Yeah, his individual stats are in the same league as these other two guys, but his team stats, those net rating stats and the win percentage aren't don't quite compare. So that's kind of disqualifies him from MVP. I think based on these stats alone, it's a pretty close race between A and B.
Yeah, definitely.
In reality, player A's odds, according to FanDuel and DraftKings, he is a runaway favorite. But based on these blind stats, Lucas, who would you give the MVP to?
I got to go player B here. Look at the on and off rating. Look at the triple double that he's averaging. The shooting percentage, the PER, everything is there. Obviously, the wins aren't necessarily there, but that shows it to you. When he's off the court, his team is garbage. That's a fact, and you cannot control how good your team is when you are off the court. He has no control over that. If his team was better, that difference between him being on the court and off the court would be worse, but he would have way more wins to go along, and that would boost him in the overall actual MVP race. The other thing that, I'll say I pick player B. Before we reveal who they are, and then we can talk a little bit more about, I think it's been pretty explicit here, but Ryan, who do you pick?
Based on blind stats, I would agree. I would pick player B. I think, obviously knowing who these players are, I would not vote for player B if I had a vote for the actual awards race. But if these awards races were just determined by blind stats, I would pick player B.
And the fact that Nikola Jokic, otherwise known as player B, has 3 MVPs already makes it that much harder to win another MVP.
Yeah.
So Shea Gilgeous-Alexander will win the MVP award this year, unless something horrible happens to him in the end of the season this year, because he has not won an MVP before, and he is captaining a rising Thunder team to the best record in the West, and he's doing it with MVP level numbers.
Yeah.
We broke it down between these two players, and it actually is really close. So you add in those other two things, and it makes sense that Shea is MVP this year.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if I could vote, I would vote for SGA in real life, because when you look at the numbers he has, and he's doing it for the best team in the NBA, he's the MVP. It's pretty simple. Based on and not even talking about the precedent that every time you win an MVP, it gets harder to win the next one. Not even talking about that. Just if you can put up crazy MVP numbers and do it for the best team in the league, you will win MVP.
Just one edit here. As it currently stands, the Cavaliers are one game ahead of the Thunder in overall rankings. But it is important to recognize that the Western Conference is a lot better
Yeah.
than the East, and it's harder to get those wins. But just
Yes.
wanted to say that.
Yeah, yeah. And the Thunder, maybe record wise, the Thunder might be a game behind the best team in the league. But they have one of the best records in the league, and they are one of the best teams in the league, and they have one of the best players in the league. And he's putting up MVP numbers. He's going to MVP, and I think deservedly so.
And if you're asking, you know, what are the best teams in the NBA, you could listen to the next episode of Draw the Line, which will come out very soon,
Oh,
where
shameless
I
plug.
said,
Ugh.
shameless plug for the Z Sports Media podcasts.
Sister
I did
podcast.
have in Tier 1A, the Celtics, Tier 1B, the Thunder and Cavs.
Interesting.
Yes.
But that is neither here nor there. All right. Up next on our list. By the way, player C was Giannis. For those
Yeah.
wondering.
Sorry for not not saying
Yeah.
that explicitly.
Yeah. So yeah, just so we're clear, player A was SGA, player B was Jokic, player C was Giannis. Let's move on to defensive player of the year. And this one's really tricky because out of all the awards, this one is probably statistically the hardest to measure. But I included it, and I think it'll be a fun discussion. Let's jump right in. From here on out, too, all these awards include less stats. So player A is averaging 0.8 steals per game, 1.6 blocks per game. His team's defensive rating when he is on the floor is 110.2. His team's defensive rating when he's off the floor is 114.3. So when he's on the floor, his team's defensive rating is 4.1 better. Player B, averaging 1.3 steals per game, 1.7 blocks per game. His defensive rating when he is on the floor is 110.5. His team's defensive rating when he's off the floor is 116.5. So defensive ratings when he is on the floor versus off the floor, there's a swing of 6. And then player C, he is averaging 3 steals per game, which is impressive and borderline record setting. 0.8 blocks per game. His team's defensive rating when he is on the floor is 116.9, and his team's defensive rating when he's off the floor is actually better, 112.1, and there's a difference of 4.8 there.
Yeah, 4.8 in the opposite direction. Right?
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Very telling.
When you look at this here. But, based on this, I honestly, it's hard for me to put names to these players because it is defensive stats that I don't really look at all the time, especially that defensive rating stat. But just based on this, I would say that player B is probably the depoy, 1.3 steals per game, along with 1.7 blocks per game. This guy seems like a versatile defender. He's got the biggest defensive rating swing out of any of these guys, and I think that's pretty important. Ranking below that, I would put player A, just because of that defensive rating swing. How could you be the defensive player of the year when your own team's defensive rating is statistically better when you are off the court? And I get that, maybe the players that play around him most often are probably not defensive-oriented players, and that can, cause this. But a difference between, a positive swing in the direction of 4 to negative 4.8, I feel like if any defensive player worth what's the expression?
Worth his salt.
Worth his salt.
Or there's
Oh, this is
also
what I rely on
worth
resources.
your weight in gold.
Yeah, I would go. I think worth his salt would have a better defensive rating on the court. So I'm just going to take some guesses. That's my ranking. I say B,
Earl, here,
A, and then C.
Can I? Yeah. So, to address the elephant in the room, that is player C's defensive rating swing. This player is not a bad defender. I
believe that.
He is third. He is third in NBA DPOY odds. You don't get there by being a bad defender. I think those stats more say, he's obviously a starter, so he's getting 30 minutes a game, something like that. And those stats tell me that his team's defense is bad, and the 4 other guys he shares the floor with on defense don't make for a good defense. That's what those stats tell me. And then the 15 or so minutes a game when the bench is on, hey, their bench actually has a better defense against other benches. That's just what that stat tells me. But at the same time, if you're going to win Defensive Player of the Year, you need to be the pillar of a good defense. You can't win Defensive Player of the Year and be on a minus defense or a negative defense. So yeah, for that reason, I would go player B, then player A, then player C. I think player C is having an incredible year defensively from an individual standpoint, but his team's defense isn't good. You can't win defensive player of the year on his team's defense.
Yeah. With that being said, I wonder, if any of these players are Victor Wembanyama because they're not. Okay, Ryan's saying they are not, which makes sense. If Victor Wembanyama was on, if he didn't go out for the season this year, I think that he probably would win this. I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
what
he was
his
like he
stats
was like
are.
minus 2,000 to win before he got
Yeah.
hurt.
So I would probably have him outside of this. I think one of these players is Jaren Jackson Jr., and I think that might be player A. I don't think that Jaren Jackson is getting him any steals. No, he's shaking his head. So that sounds like player B is Jaren Jackson Jr., the
Yes.
winner and probably favorite, I would bet right now, to win the defensive player of the year. I think that one of these players is Lugens Dort, and that might be player C. No, Lugens-Dort is not on this. But it would make sense why it wouldn't be player C because their team defense is, I think,
Yes.
number one in the entire NBA.
Yes. I think Lou Dort, I think Lou Dort should be in the depoy conversation. But these three players were the three players with the best odds on FanDuel.
Well, then I might be stumped when it comes to these other two guys. Why don't you reveal them?
Yeah. So player A is Evan Mobley, who is actually the favorite to win
Ooh,
depoy.
really?
Player B is Jaren Jackson Jr. And player C is Dyson Daniels with the Atlanta Hawks.
Wow. Wow. I mean, 3 steals per game. That's very impressive. Makes sense that it's a guard, and that's why I said Lou Dort. But uh, I did not expect Dyson Daniels
Yeah.
to be third on this list.
Well, I mean he is a good defender in his own right. And those steal stats are incredible. So I think when you're as good of a defender as he is, and you get that many, you record that many steals a game, it gets you on the depoy short list, even though you're not going to win. Yeah, I think Lou Dort probably deserves more credit in this depoy race. And you brought up Victor Wembanyama. I would be super interested. Obviously I didn't research Wembanyama's stats because I know he's not going to win. So I don't know what they are. I don't have them in front of me. But I would be super interested to see how Wembanyama's stats compare to the rest of these guys and how much
Yeah.
better they really are.
I've got a feeling that they would blow these other guys out of the water.
Yes, I totally agree. Up next, we have most improved player. And obviously for this one, it's going to be important to know what this player's stats last year were and what they are now this year. So I've included both. And these ones, it's going to be pretty simple, just points, rebounds, assists, minutes, and teams win percentage. So let's dive right in. Player A goes from 22.7 to 25.2. So that's a 2.5 point per game increase. Assists per game, this player goes from 7.5 to 9.4. So nearly 2 assists more per game and really into that upper echelon of assists. Rebounds per game, 4.3 to 6.2. He's grabbing 2 more rebounds per game. Minutes, 33.5 to 35.3. So he's getting almost 2 more minutes a game. And he plays for a team with a win percentage of .577.
Sounds like a really good player. 25, 9, and 6. I mean, that's all-star level, 100%.
Yep, and doing it for a team that a winning team.
A winning team. He must. I wouldn't be surprised. He's definitely the best player on this team, and he's made improvements. The only thing you could probably say here is that last year he was still really good. He's definitely better this year than he was last year, and he's kind of like gone from what seems to be like a really good player to a all-star level, like probably all-star starter type of guy. So I think this is usually who gets an award like this. Someone who has like really put themselves into like the public's name, like well-known guy. And I'm betting the year before this, he was probably worse. That's when you are supposed to win the award, right? It's kind of the year before you actually win it.
Yeah.
And then people
Seriously.
realize that you're good. So this guy seems legit. That's
Yeah.
all I got to say.
Yep. Yeah, and I think after we get all the players, we'll have the discussion about what MIP means and what it should mean.
Right.
But before that, let's take a look at player B. He goes from 20.8 points a game to 24.1 points per game. So it's a little bit more than a 3 points per game increase. Assists per game, 4.5 to 5.7. So that's a little bit more than assists. Rebounds per game, 5.3 to 5.4. It's a wash. minutes per game 33.5 to 35.7, and he plays for a team with a win percentage at the time of recording is 0.475.
Yeah, so this guy's gotten a little bit better for sure, but I don't think this is good enough to win most improved player. He's gone up by like 3 points per game, 1 assist, and no rebounds with, and doing it in 2 more minutes, which is kind of like, okay, you've played as well as you did last year, but you just have 2 more minutes now. His team is also below 500, so probably not a player that, gets a lot of recognition in the media. He's definitely a solid player, 24, 5, and 5, like a great player, but no chance. If this guy wins MIP, I would be shocked and disappointed.
Yes. Well, yeah, and there's not a single one of these stats that player B has over player A.
Yeah.
But player C is where I think things get a lot of fun. He goes from 13.9 points per game to 24.2 points per game. That is an increase of over 10 points per game. And he is averaging assists. He goes from 1.1 to 2.2. Not a big deal. Rebounds, he goes from 2.2 to 3.6. Also not a big deal. Minutes, he goes from 26.2 to 33.6. And he's playing for a team with a win percentage of 0.533.
I mean, this guy's gotten so much better. It's not even funny. He's gone from a player that's like a solid rotational guy, getting 14 points per game on 26 minutes is kind of like not that impressive, right? He's pretty much just a. I bet
I'd
he's
like
a
to see you
shooter.
do better.
I mean, I'm not saying that he's not playing well, but it's not like he's captaining his team. He's definitely not.
That's
leading
not
his
winning
team
any
in points per
awards, I'll
game.
tell you that.
No, definitely not. He's probably just a solid role player, someone who shoots, doesn't do much else. And then this year going to 24 points per game, and increasing his other stats as well. A huge, big jump in minutes. He's improved the most. Clearly, the NBA is getting a lot easier for him in terms of scoring, and that's the question, right? What is MIP? If MIP is who improved the most, this player has improved a lot more than the other guy, than player A. Player B, get out of here. You're done. Player B is
Yeah.
not winning.
Player B, no
But
shot.
this guy has improved a lot more than player A, and player C is the type that will win most improved player next year.
Yes,
Next year
seriously.
when he goes from 24.2
To 25 or
2
26.
and 3 to 26, 5 and 4, then he'll win because he's probably
Absolutely.
making a name for himself right now on a team. I would love to take some shots at who these players are.
Yeah, please.
So player A, I think I know who it is. I think player A is Alperen Şengün. And he says, no, it's not Şengün. No way. I'm shocked. It's not Şengün. Then player B is Şengün. No one's Şengün?
None of these players are Şengün. I would
Wow.
be at what I did for this one is I took the two favorites, and then player C was actually not listed as a top three favorite, but I
Wow.
knew I had to include him. And
Okay.
I didn't look into Şengün. I really don't know what Şengün's stats are. And what his most improved player uh case is. I'll tell you this: it is not good enough to crack FanDuel's top three.
All right. Then I'll take another shot at player A here. Jalen Williams. Is he any of these people?
No Jalen Williams on this
Jalen
list.
Williams is not on this list. Okay, I have another my last shot. Maybe I'll find one more guy. I think player C might be Jalen Green.
No.
It's not Jalen Green. Damn it.
Yeah.
Is
And
Jalen
yeah,
Green on this list?
no, he's not on this list. And you're actually bringing up all these names you're bringing up. They were not listed as one of FanDuel's top three favorites. But all of these guys, like now that you say their names, have piqued my interest. Like, oh yeah, like these players have improved a lot this year. A
Totally.
lot of guys on the Rockets have a case. Jalen Williams
Exactly.
obviously has a case. And yeah, like I'm curious to what the fuck is player B doing here? How the fuck is
I don't
he?
know his name. I know you know
Yeah.
his name, but
Yeah.
it sounds like he has
But
no
like,
business being here.
I'd imagine between Şengün and Jalen Green and Jalen Williams, I don't know how player B has better odds than all three of those guys, because I know all three of those guys have improved, and now I wish I did my research into their stats and what kind of case they have.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the only other guys that come to mind, I mean, Wemby would be on this list, but he's obviously out. Scoot Henderson, maybe he's had a
I
pretty
don't, I don't,
solid
I don't think
year
Scoot
two compared
Henderson's.
to year one.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe he would be player C, but I'm done. I'm out of guesses here.
All right. That's okay.
I'm excited to hear.
Uh, Player A is Cade Cunningham.
I should have known that. I should have gotten that one.
That's okay. I forgive you.
He should have been on this list for sure. Cade Cunningham should be on this
Yes.
list. That
Yes.
makes sense.
Um, Player B is Tyler Hero.
Oh, that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Tyler Hero would be
Yeah.
MIP this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, that's insane because Tyler Hero, like last year's stats are down for Tyler Hero. Like go back a couple years, you'd find stats that are closer to this year's stats than he's had in the past. And he's on a team that's bad now that used to be good.
Yeah.
So it's like,
no, it's like you. All right, congrats, dude. Jimmy Butler leaves your team and you average 4 more points a game. Like that's
yeah,
sick. Like,
that
good
makes
for you.
the ball's in your hands a little
Good for
bit
you.
more.
Yeah. And you want me to tell you who player C is?
Can you give me the team or give me like the region, perhaps?
Okay, Western Conference.
Okay. Western Conference.
Pacific.
Can you give
He's in the Pacific.
Pacific Division?
Yeah.
Okay. Is he on the Kings?
Not on the Kings.
Is he on the Lakers?
Not on the Lakers.
Okay, what team is he on?
Not on the Clippers.
And this player is Norman Powell.
Norman Powell.
Norman Powell, who has had a great year this year, and it's really surprising. Pretty late in his career too, to have this kind of increase is awesome. And Cade Cunningham is probably going to win this award.
He is the favorite
for good reason, because he is the best player on his team. He is a all-star level player, and he's made his team really good this year. Last year they were
He's been on the most improved team.
Absolutely. Cade Cunningham should win this award. If it wasn't, if Cade Cunningham didn't exist, I really think there's a solid case for Norman Powell to win the award. But those other players that I mentioned, Jalen Green, Şengün, and Jalen Williams, I think those guys all have a shot. But looking at the numbers here from Norman Powell, just going from 14 to 24 points per game, like, what year is this for Norman Powell? Year 8? Like, that's insane.
At least, yeah.
So impressive of him.
Yeah.
It's not just he learned how to play the game. It's like he's playing in a much better situation for him, and I don't know, he's figured something out.
Yeah.
It's not like he's a better basketball player now than he was last year.
Yeah.
He's figured something out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, based on these blind stats, I would vote for player C. Based on real life, I would vote for Norman Powell. I think he embodies the 3 words most improved player. And I know that in the NBA, the most improved player award has taken on a meaning of its own, and there's, now they just like to give it to a young guy who improved the year before. I think that's stupid because I don't think this award is called the young guy who improved a year award, the year before award. I think it's called the most improved player award, and the most improved player by far is Norman Powell. And when you look at Norman Powell's stats and you compare them to Cade Cunningham's stats, who's probably going to win, they are a little bit worse. He's averaging 1 point less points per game, and obviously, you look at the assists. That's where Cade Cowell really breaks away from Norman Powell. Did I say Cade Cowell? Cade Cunningham.
You did. That's fine.
Yeah, Cade Cunningham. I think the assist is where Cade Cunningham really, really has. Cade Cunningham has demonstrated himself to be a better player than Norman Powell, but not by much. And when you look at who's actually the most improved player, which, remind me again, is the name of the award, right?
Yes, but it's not just
So it should be Norman
statistically
Powell.
improved. It's not just statistically improved. Think about, like, it goes to show how much better Cade Cunningham has been this year, given that the team has not changed very much around him. But he's taken his team from a shitty team to a good team. It's like, that's like, maybe it shows up it does show up on the stat sheet. It clearly does. But it's more than just that. He's playing winning basketball now, and he wasn't last year. The Clippers are as good as they were last year. Norman Powell is playing much better, but is that contributing to winning basketball?
Can you therefore argue that Norman Powell elevated from Norman Powell from the first 9 years of his career to what Paul George provided that team last year?
Yeah, because Paul George sucked last year.
Okay. I think he sucks this year. I don't think he sucked last year.
No, he didn't suck, but he. I mean, honestly, yeah. If if you change Norman Powell's name to Paul George, people would
Like
be like, Paul George is having a solid
look
year.
at Norman Powell's stats. Those are basically Paul George on the Clippers stats.
And it doesn't contribute to winning basketball. It just goes to
Well,
show that there
they
are
are
certain
winning.
players. I
It
mean, they're
doesn't
winning.
contribute to playoff wins. It doesn't contribute to playoff wins, but the MIP is not based on what happens in the postseason.
Yeah, but he's also not, the best player on his team. You would still say
Yeah,
James
that's
Harden
true.
is a better player. Ben Simmons is on that team now, which is kind of crazy. I don't know
Kawhi
if you
Leonard's
would
on
say,
that team.
I would. Kawhi Leonard is on that. That actually slipped my mind. The fact that slipped my mind.
Yeah, wait,
Goes
don't the
to show a
Clippers have
lot.
someone else on that team?
So yeah, I mean, he's not even the third best player on his own team.
Okay.
I have to say, the Cade deserves the award, in my
Okay.
opinion.
I think that's where we disagree, and it's very okay to disagree.
Yes, it is.
All right, let's move on to Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year, I really only have two statistics. Win percentage from last year to this year, and what year on the job this is for them. And then in doing that second stat, I realize all these coaches are in their first year with their new team. So just know that, but you can't use that to argue for one coach over the other. All right, so the Coach A has taken his team. Last year they had a win percentage of 585. This year their win percentage is 833. So he took a good team and turned them into a great team. Coach B, his team had a win percentage of 171 last year, and now their win percentage is 557. That should actually say, yes, 557. And then
I
Coach.
see. I can tell who this player,
Yeah.
who this coach is, or what
Yes.
team he coaches.
Yes. Oops.
Well, I knew that anyway. There's only one team that went from a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
171 to it being a positive team this year.
577. Yeah, yeah. All right, and then Coach C, also his first year on the job, obviously. Last year, his team had a 573 win percentage without him. And this year, their win percentage is 638. So he took a good team and made them a little better.
Yeah, I think Coach A wins this one here. Going from a good team to a great team is kind of what does it. Coach B has a shot for sure. Going from an absolutely garbage team to a better than average team in the NBA. I think he definitely has a shot. But I would kind of say next year, if Coach B can continue this upward progression, if he has put something together, then I would be more inclined to give Coach B the award next year. Like say if they go from a slightly above average team to 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. And by the way, Coach B is the coach of the Detroit Pistons. I don't know what's his name?
JB Bickerstaff.
JB Bickerstaff. Okay, well, I mean he's got some experience as well. So maybe I take that back a little bit. I'm kind of assuming that he was like a young coach and someone who needs to be proved. But JB Bickerstaff used to be the coach of the Cavaliers, who, by the way, that's Team A.
Yeah. So yeah, the coach of Team B used to coach Team A last year.
That's correct. And Team A, maybe I'm just a little partial because Kenny Atkinson, who is Coach
Forever
A,
Warrior.
was a
Forever
Warriors
champion.
coach forever. And I just kind of get to take credit for what's going on in Cleveland in that way. I do not know who Coach C is, but I would rank them how they're ranked here, A, B, and then C.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what this comes down to is, what do you value more? What do you find more impressive? Taking a good team and making them a great team, or taking a beyond shitty team and making them a good team? And for me, it's a coin toss. I don't feel educated or opinionated enough on the matter to really feel like, oh yeah, I want Coach A to win, or oh yeah, I want Coach B to win. If I had to pick, I think I would pick Coach B, which is JB Bickerstaff of the Pistons, because the Pistons are, to make the Pistons anything better than bad is an accomplishment. Like,
It's impressive.
even if he doesn't win
for sure.
Coach of the Year, he should win some award. The congrats,
or
you made the Pistons
Cade.
you made the playoffs with the Pistons award. Like that needs to be its own separate
Yeah.
award.
Oh, that's true.
But yeah, so if I had to pick, I would pick B, but I'm perfectly happy with you picking A, which is Kenny Atkinson of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Atkinson, I think, is the favorite. So if/when he does win, I'm not going to be bothered by that. But I think Bickerstaff deserves to be in this race, which he is.
100%. Yes.
And I think he deserves to win it regardless of Atkinson.
And who is Coach C?
That is any guesses first?
I don't know. A record of 573 to
I'll give you a
6,
hint.
8,
Not
38.
only is this his first year with his team, this is his first year coaching in the NBA.
I really, man. Can you give me the conference?
We talk about this team a lot.
Oh, this is JJ Redick.
It is.
I see.
Yes.
No way JJ Redick should win Coach of the Year.
He's not.
Him.
It's a two-horse
LeBron's
race.
the Coach of the Year.
Yeah. It's a two-horse race. JJ Redick is the third favorite on FanDuel.
That's just because he coaches
which,
the Lakers, and the Lakers are pretty good this year. So
well, and there was no one else who like, oh yeah, like this guy should
well,
win
they
Coach of
had
the Year.
Darvin Ham, who was like, by all accounts, a horrible coach. Coached them to.
They did go to the
a
Western Conference
573.
Finals with Darvin Ham.
That's true. And I'm not saying that Darvin Ham is a horrible coach, but I've seen videos of him in like timeouts saying
I
shit.
sent you those videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Salute.
that's his salute. What's up with that? What did he say? He was like, "We gotta work hard." Salute.
Yeah.
I love it. I love
I
it.
know, yeah. Darvin Ham for Coach of the Year. All right, let's wrap this one up with Sixth Man of the Year. This one is interesting. I think this one, when you take the blind stats and compare them to favorites and who's likeliest to win the award, this is the most interesting. So let's dive right into it. Player A is averaging 13.9 points per game, 3.4 assists, 3.8 rebounds in 27.9 minutes, and he is playing for a team with a win percentage of 705.
All right. Seems like a good player. 27.9 minutes, and all these players have around 27 or 28 minutes per game. These six-man candidates are all fraudulent. These guys are starters. They're closing games, I'm sure. But 14 points, 14, 3, and 3. He's a solid player. I wouldn't describe him as a huge difference maker, probably, and especially in 28 minutes, I'm not very impressed by this player. But a win percentage of 705 kind of makes me think maybe he's more well known or playing for a pretty good team. I don't really think this is that incredible.
Yeah, those stats certainly don't jump out at you. Player B, averaging 16.7 points per game, just 1.7 assists and 2.8 rebounds. He's doing it in 27.3 minutes per game, but his team has a win percentage of 557. So better scoring, worse team.
Yeah. Not very impressed either by this player, but it makes sense that these six men are scoring guys. They're people who come off the bench.
Yeah,
and
that is the role of a six man. Be a scorer.
That's generally that's what they do. So I'm not that concerned.
Like you don't win Sixth Man
guy,
of the Year by being a playmaker or a rebounder or a defender.
Absolutely not. You would be in the starting lineup if you were a playmaker or rebounder.
Yeah.
So I think this guy's also a very good player, and 17 points per game or close to 17 points per game is better than 14 points per game, but I would say that these players are probably very similar in terms of how good I think that they are and how deserving they are of winning this award. And because of that, I would edge player A because his team is better.
Okay. Well, let's hear from player C.
Yes.
Player C is averaging 18.1 minutes per game. Excuse me. He's averaging 18.1 points per game, just 1.5 assists and 3.9 rebounds. He did get traded midseason. He got traded from a team that has a win percentage right now of 450 to a team with a win percentage of 833. And because he got traded, I couldn't find the exact stat of exactly how many minutes he has per game across the two teams. It's around 28 minutes a game. It's the same ballpark as these other two guys.
Yeah, the 18 points per game on a
Actually,
better team.
One more thing on player C. Well, honestly, player A is known as a good defender. Player B, I think, is a fine defender. Player C does have a reputation for being I don't want to say very good defender, and I also don't want to say he has a reputation, but people who know player C know he's a very good defender.
I mean, I think player C takes the cake here. Anyways, I was going to say, without that defense, he's on the best team. which is kind of the edge that I gave to player A, and he's averaging the most points per game off the bench. He's also getting 4 rebounds per game, which is pretty solid. He's not a great playmaker, but on the Celtics, no, he's on the Thunder. He's on the Thunder, and no, he's not on the Thunder. He's on the Cavs, and his name is Ty Jerome. No, his name is DeAndre Hunter.
There you go. Good job.
Who has been playing very well for the Cavaliers, but it makes sense that you wouldn't see him.
And he played well
on
for the
these
Hawks
lists.
before they traded him too.
Was he a start? I feel like he was a starter for the Hawks, though.
He wasn't because
was coming off the bench.
he used to be, and then they got Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson actually was probably the favorite for this award before he got hurt. But they have Jalen Johnson and Zachary Rishacher, however you say his name. They're their starting forwards. So they brought DeAndre Hunter off the bench before they traded him.
That's very interesting. It kind of like that's the most cheater six man that I've seen though, because obviously they're starting Risa Shea because they want to say, hey, you're the number 1 overall pick. We'll start you every game. When DeAndre Hunter is definitely a better player. So DeAndre Hunter getting 28 minutes per game, it's kind of like.
And I mean, they could have started him over Jalen Johnson as well, but he was having his own 6 Man of the Year campaign. Or sorry, Jalen Johnson was starting, and he was in the most improved conversation before he got hurt. So, DeAndre Hunter was coming off the bench behind the number 1 overall pick and a player who was putting up a most improved player of the year campaign.
I guess that makes sense that he would be a bench player.
And yet the Hawks still
28
suck.
points per game. The Hawks are garbage. And he's playing really well for the Cavaliers. So I think it really bodes for his late season push potentially. And I think that he is, out of these 3 guys, statistically I think that he should win. Out of these other guys, I'll take a guess at these other 2 players. I really don't have much. I do not have much to say on these guys other than just maybe based on their win percentage. Give me a conference for player A.
East. Top 2 team in the East.
Okay, so he's not on the Celtics, or he's not on the Cavaliers, so he's on the Celtics. Who's the Celtics? Derek White. Derek White
starts.
Oh, wow. This is Peyton Pritchard?
It is Peyton Pritchard.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was like that.
Me neither.
I will refuse to have Peyton Pritchard win this award.
Yeah.
Because it gives validation to all those people on TikTok. Because Valerie is always like, oh, whatever, Molly Pritchard, I don't know what her first name is. Her husband plays on the Celtics, right? And then it's like, you have to be like, yeah, but he sucks. He's not good. He's not really a player on the Celtics.
Yeah.
But if he wins 6 Man of the Year, then you have to be like, damn. Okay, Peyton Pritchard is a valid NBA player, and I refuse his validity. And what about player B? Who's that?
That is Malik Beasley.
Love Malik Beasley playing on the Detroit Pistons on a team that is doing really well.
They've got a finalist in a lot of these awards.
Yeah, totally, and they should win at least one. I mean, they'll definitely win MIP. I think.
Yes.
I think DeAndre Hunter deserves to win this, though.
Yes. Looking at the blind stats, I would vote for player C. In real life, I would vote for DeAndre Hunter. However, Peyton Pritchard is the favorite. He's like minus 140 to win 6 Man of the Year, followed by Malik Beasley, who's plus, I don't know, 300 or 400 something. And DeAndre Hunter's like plus 800 to win this award, which blows my mind. Because DeAndre Hunter he has the best stats. I think he's the better player. I really don't know what either of these players, particularly Peyton Pritchard, has over DeAndre Hunter, other than the fact that he plays for the Celtics and everybody and their mother loves to glaze the Celtics.
Totally. If you told a GM you can pick one of these 3 players to have on your team, and they would all pick DeAndre Hunter.
If it wasn't a media vote, and if it was a vote by people who actually know what they're talking about, it would be DeAndre Hunter.
Totally. Well, I think that's going to do it. We have no more awards to go over for this episode. I hope you all had fun. Fuck Rookie of the Year. It's over. Who's going to win? Is Edie? Who's the favorite? Did you look into that at all?
I think right now it's Stephon Castle. I think Jalen Wells, former Sonoma State basketball player. Rest in peace, Sonoma State Athletics. Did you hear about that?
No,
S-
did they disband?
Sonoma State has like a budget deficit of $25 million, which for a
Wow,
small Division two state school is a lot of money. So they cut a ton of programs, not just athletics. Like they cut like a bunch of academic departments, and student services and things that make a
interesting.
university, including all of their sports teams. Like
Wow,
Sonoma State's athletic department got Thanos snapped.
it's over.
Because like I don't even understand like if this was UCLA, well, first of all, if it was UCLA and they lost $25 million, they would not cut their athletic department.
No, because
Second
they
of all,
make
if
that much.
right, and second of all, a big school, if they're $25 million in the hole, that's really not that much money. But for a school like Sonoma State, where $25 million is a lot of money, how do you have a budget deficit of that much? Like, how do you let it get that bad? How do you lose $25 million in a year?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So
That's ridiculous.
you're a
How like
state
I'm
funded
I'm I don't
school.
think I could do that if I tried. Like,
I couldn't actually. Let me cook on some parlays, and I'll get back to you.
yeah, yeah, seriously. Maybe Sonoma State's chancellor or dean was betting on these NBA awards.
Yeah, he had DeAndre Hunter for six
Yeah,
man of the year,
he put the
which
house on
he
DeAndre Hunter.
based opinion, but
Yeah,
probably not going to come to fruition.
right.
Well, with that being said, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Unentitled Sports. Thank you all for listening. Tune into the TikTok and the Instagram. We'll probably have some clips up from this episode. Love to hear from you guys there, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.